What's up guys, Wholesome Joe back again with another tutorial video. This time we're finishing up our Arduino based Proton Pack lights and sound tutorial with something I promised a long time ago, and just now I'm getting to it. I'm using all these little parts right here to do it. We're gonna add some smoke. Let's do it.
So for this build we're gonna need a 6-volt aquarium water pump, or you can use a 5-volt one. This one's 6 volts. We're gonna need some aquarium tubing. I forget what diameter this is. I'll look it up and flash it on the screen. A relay, a 5-volt relay. This is the one that I use. I will put a link in the description to it. A fan. This is a 5-volt blower fan. I've heard these work the best. And it's got a JST connector on the end. You can use this if you want. You can get some JSTs. I'm not going to, but you can if you want. You're also gonna need a buck converter. I just bought a whole bunch of these. These are nothing fancy. These are actually the same ones you would use if you were doing Mike's PCB board. So I just have a whole bunch of them. These don't have any kind of indicator or anything on it. So you have to use a screwdriver to adjust the voltage and that little screw right there. And that is what the multimeter is for, so that you can connect the battery to this and then use your multimeter to determine how much voltage is going into it. You want to set it to 5 volts. Also need one of these T2 Kanger Vape tanks. I only have one, so I've already put it together. I will flash a picture up of what it looks like without all this stuff. Some different color wires. This is what I have left over from another build, so I'm just going to use this. A multimeter to set the voltage on your buck converter. If you don't have one, you can get one of these for really cheap at Harbor Freight. I would also suggest buying some of these alligator clips because it makes connecting things and getting an accurate reading a lot easier. We're gonna need some vegetable glycerin. This is what the smoke is going to be made from. Some people say use a 50-50 or a 70-30 glycerin and water mixture. I've so far just been doing this straight and it seems to work, but I can see that it's kind of thick. So maybe thinning it out a little bit, maybe like a 50-50 glycerin and water solution. You can also get glycerin and there's another chemical, I forget what it's called. Or you can just go to a vape shop and ask for vape juice.
Alright, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of this, I'm going to go over this wiring diagram that I've come up with to help you figure this out a little bit easier. There are a couple of other diagrams I've seen. They use a different configuration than this. I tried to do what I thought was the easiest thing. As has been the case for all of the tutorials that I've done, I've tried to think of whatever is the absolute easiest, least amount of components possible, so that anyone can do this, even if you don't have a whole lot of experience. So if you're watching this tutorial and you've not watched the other videos on how to do Arduino based Proton Pack lights and sound, I would highly suggest you stop watching this video right here and go back and watch those, because this is going to be something you're not going to want to do until after you have done all of the other stuff. So if you have been using my tutorials to build your lights and sound and you've got everything working and you're done with that part, then you're good to watch this video. So that, because you're going to understand what I'm talking about without needing me to explain it again, because it's all going to be based and related to those other videos. So we're just going to go over this real quick and then I'll show you this inside the pack. So I'm not going to go through all of the soldering and stuff because you know how to do that by now if you've been watching my other videos. So we're going to start. You have your battery. I'm using the talent cell. You can use the bigger 6,000 milliamps. I'm using the 3,000 milliamps. It doesn't matter. Mine has the 5-volt USB plug, but I'm just doing everything off of the 12 volts because that's easier to me. You could potentially run this off of the 5-volt. I've heard some people say you can't, but then I've heard other people says that this battery does have enough amps to push all of this stuff off of the 5V USB. Try that at your own risk. I'm doing it off the 12 volts because I know that for sure will work. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a positive and negative lead coming off of your talent cell. If you're like me, you probably have multiple of them because you're running different things off of this one talent cell battery. So that's fine. You've already done this before in the previous videos. You know how to split the power. So you're going to have your negative and your positive. Those are going to go to the ends of your buck converter, whatever buck converter you're using. I'm using these little tiny MP1584s that have the screw. There's no indicator for the power or for what the voltage is, so you have to use the multimeter that I mentioned earlier to set the voltage on these little guys. But I just like them because they're really small and they're really cheap and they work just as well. So set it to 5 volts, and then you're going to have everything else coming out of the buck converter, and then those wires are going to go to each of the individual components. So you're going to have your positive out on the buck converter come to the COM port on your 5-volt relay, which is right here, and then you're going to have the negative out from your buck converter going to the negative of your air pump that is wired in parallel with your vape coil. So, and you watch the tutorial that I'm going to link on how to build the smoke machine, and that'll teach you how to attach these together. So these are wired together, and then you're going to have another wire just kind of piggybacking off of this one going to the buck converter. Super simple. And then you're going to have the positive lead of the smoke machine or the air pump going to the no or the normally open port, and that is what triggers this to allow the air pump to come on when the overheat function happens. And then you're going to come over your other negative lead out of the buck converter is going to be to your fan blower. I recommend these blower types. I tried to use the other normal type, and this just seems to work better. This is a 5-volt. All the components we're using in this build are 5 volts except for the battery, which is why we're stopping it down to 5 volts. I've seen people use 12 volts. I've seen people use more than one relay. You don't really need to do that. If you want to do that, sure, but you don't really need to do that. And my fan just came on my computer. And then the positive lead from the fan blower is also going to go to the normally open. So you're probably seeing the theme here is that the normally open is what's basically sending power to these things in order to trigger them. So then on the other side of the relay, you're going to have your positive and your negative, and all this is doing is providing power to the relay. So you can power this from the actual rails on your PCB boards that you already have in your pack that are already being powered by this battery. That's what I did. So I just stuck the power positive wire to a positive rail and the negative to a negative rail. It doesn't really matter which one, as long as it's actually getting power from the battery. You could power it any kind of way you want, honestly. The most important part of this is that this yellow wire is our data wire, which is going to be in the in port on the relay. And I highly recommend getting this specific relay, and I will make sure I put a link to this specific one in the description, because I was recommended these and I've seen other people have issues when they use other ones, and this one worked perfectly on the first try. So I didn't have to change anything. I didn't have to change any code. It all worked right out of the box. The only thing that I had issues with is because I initially tried to power this whole setup piggybacked off of a buck converter that was also powering my Arduino. So the most important thing is that you cannot power this off of one of your existing buck converters that you already used in your build. You need to have one specifically for just your smoke system. So that was a little annoying, but you know, that's what you have to do, because this pulls too many amps to be connected to a buck converter that's also providing power to something else. And this wire is going to go to pin D9 on your Arduino. It should be the only one that you haven't used yet. And then once you have that, all you have to do is fill up your vape coil tank with the glycerin that I mentioned, or whatever vape concoction fog juice you intend to use, and then you should have smoke if everything goes as planned. So let's look at the pack, and I'll go through how all of this stuff is wired.
Alright, so this is going to be kind of maybe a little difficult to see because my wiring is kind of crazy, but basically we're just going to go over how to connect our smoke machine that we have already built, because there's plenty of tutorials about how to build one of these, so we're not going to complicate it by showing you how to build one of these. I will link the one that I used to build mine in the description, and I'll just put a card. You can just click on it from this video. And again, you're going to need one of these Kanger T2 Vape tanks. I'll show you what it looks like by itself so you can see it. This is just the only one I had, and I already built mine. So basically, essentially, all you're going to do, you can follow the diagram, but basically everything is going to come off of your talent cell battery if you're using a talent cell battery. If you're using a different kind of battery, that's a whole other thing. I'm using a talent cell. Most people are using the talent cell. I have it running through this hole. It's coming out on the other side right here. Got some Velcro. This just attaches to my motherboard. And so then I've got positive and negative leads coming off of it. It's split a couple of different ways because I got it going to different things. But this is the most important thing, because I learned this the hard way. You have to run your smoke machine on its own separate buck converter. You cannot run it off of the ones that are powering your other components. Like this one is powering my DF player. Then I have another one over here that's powering my Arduino. I tried to initially piggyback off of one of these, and it just doesn't work because it's pulling too much amps already. So you're gonna have to do another set of leads coming off of your talent cell battery to a new buck converter. And you see I have my ins and my outs. You can just look on the back, and these are cool because they have two separate connection points, so you don't actually have to piggyback. You can just use the other thing. And then you'll use your multimeter to, once you have this connected to your battery, you'll attach your multimeter to the outs side and adjust this little screw right here that I have covered in hot glue, and step your buck converter down to 5 volts. That's very important because everything in this build is running off of 5 volts. The vape technically is supposed to only run at 3.7 volts, but so far I've been running it at 5 volts. It doesn't run long enough for it, like unless you're just pumping smoke, but for the overheat function, which is all I'm using it for, it seems to be fine. Maybe my vape will die earlier than it's supposed to. If it does, then I'll adjust, but I put a dab of hot glue on the screw so it can't be moved any further. I suggest doing that. And so then basically you're just gonna follow the diagram that I've already made for you. It's very simple. So all you're gonna do is from the buck converter, once you have the buck converter connected and you have your outs, your positive out is going to go to your relay. It's gonna go in the COM port, which is right in the center. It's gonna go right there in the COM port, the positive from the buck converter. The negative from the buck converter is gonna go to, it's this one. It's gonna go to the negative from your air pump. Now, and if you've made your smoke machine using the tutorial that I'm gonna link, the vape tank and the air pump are wired in parallel. So basically you're just attaching another negative wire where your negative wire from your vape tank is connecting to the negative on the air pump. So there's technically 2 wires coming off of this, and you can see it better here on the positive. But the negative is gonna go to the negative on the out of the buck converter, just like mine is. And then the positive of the air pump and the vape tank is gonna run to, and it switches to green because that's all I had, only wire I had, is gonna come to the no or normally open port on the relay. It's just gonna say no, it's the first one. And then that's connecting just your smoke machine. So then if you're coming here to the actual power to the relay, in this case you can jump off of the rails of one of your boards that's already being powered by the buck converter. In this case I just used the one that my Arduino is on, so I just have the positive and the negative, just going to the rails of my board to the positive and negative on my relay. And then this white cable is going to be the digital pin. I think mine just says N on it. Yeah, it just says N. That's going to go to pin D9 on your Arduino, and you can see it right there, pin D9. It's the only one that you probably haven't used if you followed the rest of my instructions, because we didn't do the smoke machine. And that's pretty much it for just the smoke machine part. So in order to push the smoke out of the end filter, as we mentioned earlier, you need one of these blower fans. So the blower fan just has a positive and a negative, so that's pretty easy. So basically, all you're gonna do is the positive is gonna go in the normally open along with the positive from the smoke machine. So you're gonna have 2 wires coming out of the normally open section. And then the negative is gonna go to the out of the negative on the buck converter. So you'll have 2 wires coming out of that as well. And that's pretty much it. That's the entire setup. And if you do it right, basically what will happen is this relay will trigger, which will send a signal to pin 9 on the Arduino, which will trigger when the overheat function takes place, which will then trigger the smoke machine and the air pump, or the smoke machine and the fan, which will heat up the coil. This will produce smoke. The smoke will go through this tube, go in this little contraption that I've built, and the blower fan will push the fog into the air filter and out the holes. So you can do this part however you want. Mine's a little crude. There's 3D printed mounts you can use for this. I just built one out of like a plastic cup and some foam. I'm gonna seal the top of this so that so that smoke can't escape from here. And then I just put a hole in the cup to run this short piece of tube so that the smoke can go through there. And I sealed this up with some electrical tape. And then I can still twist this off to refill it. I'm gonna figure out how to mount this better because it's not mounted at all right now. This is just really to get the functionality of it, more so than to show you how to do this part of it, because everyone's setup is gonna be a little bit different. And so you can do it how I've done it, or you can 3D print something. There's a lot of different little mounts that people have made. You can find those on Thingiverse, or you can look in the 3D printed Ghostbusters props group or the Arduino Ghostbusters props group, which is my group, and you can find that stuff there. Anyway, we'll do a test really quick so you can just see how it works. Yeah, so I'm gonna flip this on. So the relay comes on. That's how you know you got power to your relay. And then basically I'm just gonna fire off my wand, which is over here off to the side, until it overheats. And then I'll show you the relay when it kicks on. I'll try to pan over real quick. Now it's overheated, relay's on, come over, and now you're gonna see smoke going everywhere because I don't have this sealed. But if I did have it sealed, it's all gonna come out of the infilter. And that's pretty much it. So at the end of this video, I'll show you a full test of the pack once everything is sealed back up.
All right, guys, that's it. That's how you build and attach a smoke machine to your Arduino-based Proton Pack using Mike S11's code and all of the components to build one completely do it yourself from scratch. Not gonna cost a lot of money, and you'll have an awesome, cool, smoking vent effect just like in the Ghostbusters video game. If a lot of people don't realize that the venting thing was just not in the movie, it was just from the video game, but I think it was cool, and I think it adds like just an extra element. You're going to conventions, you can overheat your pack and show people at the convention the cool smoke effect. And one other thing that I'm gonna do, you should do it too, is you can flavor the vape juice or the glycerin with flavoring that will make it have a scent to it. And a lot of people like to use marshmallow or roasted marshmallow, so it smells like marshmallows when the smoke comes out. Remember, to be safe, guys, I don't recommend having actual nicotine vape juice. I would just don't do that. Use the glycerin, use the fog juice, be safe with it, and have fun. If you like these videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel, watch all of my other videos, let me know what you thought, and let me know if you have implemented this in your build. I'd love to see and talk to you about the projects you have, and I love hearing when people use my tutorials, so please let me know if these tutorials have helped you, and all of the links and parts will be in the description below so you can go and order everything that I've used for yourself. All right, guys, keep busting.